Hello, and thank you, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us for a new episode of Anewgo of New Home Sales. I'm your host, Anya Chrisanthon, and joining me today are two people. So, one, we have Beth Byrd, who is VP of Sales here at Anewgo. Hopefully, all of you are already familiar with Beth. So, Beth, say hello.
Hello.
And we have a special guest today. Joining us is P. Allen Smith, who is a TV personality, garden and community designer, and longtime PBS host known for his passion for sustainable living and thoughtful design. As the creator of Moss Mountain Farm and owner of Extreme Panel Technologies, one of America's leading manufacturers of structurally insulated panels, Allen is on the mission to make net zero, energy efficient building the new standard. Today, he's focused on shaping communities where sustainability, walkability, and intentional design go hand in hand. With that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Beth.
Thanks,
Thanks, Anya.
Anya.
Thank you.
Ellen, I'm so excited that we can have this conversation. For those of you who don't know who are listening today, Alan and I spoke together at the Builder Show. And it was so exciting for me because I've been fangirl for a long time. Gardening's my hobby. I have your books. I'd watched your show. So it was an honor to share the stage with you.
It's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was great. So I thought there was so much to talk about in that time. I wanted to expound on a few ideas that we discussed on the stage and go a little beyond that. So to give our listeners some background, will you share the story of Moss Mountain Farm?
Absolutely. Yes. And thanks for having me on the show. It was so much fun to be together at IBS this year. We had a great audience, really good questions, and there was a lot of interest about structurally insulated panels and Moss Mountain Farm. So, to your question, Beth, Moss Mountain Farm is located in central Arkansas on the banks of the Arkansas River. We have about 550 acres. And I started that farm or created what's there today out of an idea for our PBS show Garden Home. And we've been at Moss Mountain for about 20 years. It's a farmstead that goes back to 1840. The Moss family came there then in the 1830s, late 1838. And at that time, that was really part of the new state of Arkansas, which was part of the Louisiana Territory around 1803 when Jefferson bought the Louisiana Territory from Napoleon. But the idea was to put into place an old idea that I think has relevance today, which is this notion of the faire mornay, or the ornamented farm, meaning a functional landscape, but one that's done with aesthetic considerations. And so it was an idea that caught Jefferson's attention in 1786 when he was with John Adams and went around to English gardens using Thomas Whately's observations on modern gardening. Jefferson had a 1770 edition of that book, and they went around to look at sort of the top gardens in and around London. And Whately had, I think, 19 in his book that were must-sees. And Jefferson and Adams saw, well, 16 of them. So they got around to see them. But it was a faire mornay. It was Philip Southcote's Woburn Farm that really, I think, caught Mr. Jefferson's attention. He was looking for ideas for Monticello. And anybody who is interested in Thomas Jefferson knows that Jefferson was one who really loved function and form and beauty and functionality. And you see that at Monticello in spades. Right and left, you see this particular indelible mark on everything that he did. So what I tried to do with Moss Mountain Farm was to create a modern faire mornay. When I was a graduate student in England in 1986, the then Prince of Wales really caught my attention with what he was doing with Poundbury, and also the Duchy of Cornwall converting it all to organic practices. And knew his head farmer, David Wilson, and everything he was doing really captured my imagination. I wanted to come home and create a faire mornay and something that was organic and represented a lot of the green movement that was underway as a graduate student in England. Yeah.
There's so much beauty and history and tradition, but what's fascinating to me is how you really utilized innovation and modern technology in the building process. So tell us a little bit about that decision-making process and what was your goal as you were choosing your materials for the farm?
The goal from the outset was to create something that represented time and place. And since the Moss family had come there in the 1830s, we adopted an architectural style that would have been found in that part of the world, which was Greek Revival. And we went to properties within a 175-mile radius of the farm, looked at domestic architecture from that period, and really took dimensions, details, and more importantly, I think the proportions of things were very important in the creating the aesthetic of the main house. And in the main house, we actually went to IBS 20 years ago and met with lots of people and tried to make choices that were greener choices every step of the way to make our approach much more sustainable. And some of the things that we did were just basically time-honored practices, like Rumford fireboxes for the fireplaces, which are more efficient. I mean, fireplaces aren't efficient to begin with, but if you're going to have a more,
Right.
if you're going to be true to the period, we weren't trying to be, we're going to make this look like an old house. Now it does, and the greatest compliment I get is people walk up to me and go, "Gosh, when did you restore this house?" And I said, "I didn't restore it, I built it anew." And so the idea was to use time-honored practices that fit, and then also to integrate as much modern technology as we could to make it as green as possible. And some of those elements that were more technologically advanced, we used, for instance, ICFs for the basement, insulated concrete forms. What a great product. I wanted to build the house, go from the ICFs up with SIPs, and we could not find a manufacturer at that time that we could work with our sponsorship program. And so we ended up building it with framing it, just sticks, and using 2x8s. And we used a soybean oil based foam insulation for in between the studs. And we also used shredded denim from a blue jean factory for batting and that kind of thing in walls inside the house. Yeah, and then we did a passive solar on the south face. We used a standing seam roof, which I think are very good for modern times, but also it was a technology that Jefferson used at Monticello, the standing seam roof.
Right. So you were really implementing the high performance home technology really before it became a buzzword in the industry.
We were trying to, I'm just so into all of that, as long as it doesn't get in the way of the aesthetics. And so I wanted to do solar, Beth, but I didn't want it on the roof because it would destroy the aesthetic. And so that's why we did the passive. So we used PEX tubing underneath the roof panels, the metal panels, that takes the heated glycol down into the floor. And we have a brick floor in the basement, and the heat warms the floor. It works beautifully.
Amazing. So what was the connection from building that home to Extreme Panel?
Well, I longed, as I mentioned, to go vertical from the foundation up with SIP panels, and that didn't work out. So we built another house on the farm. We call it the Southern Living Cottage. And we did that as a program for Google. When Google bought YouTube, they wanted to up sort of their content, make it a little more compelling. And so they hired 100 producers from around the country, and we were fortunate enough to be one of them to produce a lot of content for them. I made a drawing of a farmhouse, and I said, I want to show how you can build a high efficiency home for $150,000 in 150 days. And so we set out to do that. Tried to use tips again, it didn't work out. I've gotten into the assisted living space, and we had a project that came up where my partner wanted to build our new facility with sticks. And I again brought up SIPs, and I had been introduced through my design partner, Lou Oliver, who does a fantastic job. He introduced me to a representative from Extreme Panel Technologies, and I was trying to get my partner in assisted living to maybe think about SIP panels. And as a result of that meeting and getting to know the family, I ended up purchasing Extreme Panel Technologies and just love it.
Tell for our listeners who aren't familiar with SIPs, give us maybe a short overview of what does Extreme Panel do? What is a SIP?
Yeah, well, structurally insulated panels use a dense polystyrene, a structural block of polystyrene, and it is sandwiched between OSB. We use a particular type of OSB that is infused with zinc borate, so it's insect resistant as well as mold and mildew resistant. We do a jumbo panel here at Extreme Panel. That's an 8 by 24, so they're really large panels. So it makes the building process much more efficient. So with why SIP panels? Well, they're extraordinarily energy efficient. The R values are through the roof. And we do a 4-inch, 6-inch, 8-inch, 10 and 12-inch thick panels for walls and roofs and floors. But the idea is to help with energy efficiency, also the speed of build, and also the structure, the durability of the structure itself over time. So there's a lot of interest in what we do from the build to rent space. There's a lot of those developments going up presently because the insurance rates and so forth are more favorable to a better built product like we produce.
And let's talk a little more about cost there, because you and I have talked about how there's so many factors in terms of cost of living that aren't always considered.
Yes, well, I mean, you think about just the average American living in a home and what their costs are, and depending on where they are in the country. Particularly if you go around coastal areas, insurance costs have gone through the roof. So that has to be considered in one's daily life and expense. And then, of course, energy is there. And then just the overall maintenance of a home. And you want something that is resilient and durable and it's going to hold up for a long time. Yeah.
Yet I think it's interesting. People sometimes think that forward-thinking technologies like this have to look modern. And I love that you have paired the history and tradition with modern materials. And so after all those projects where you couldn't find SIPs, the gatehouse cottages, you finally were able to use them on your property. Tell us about that.
Yes. Well, thank you. It was important to me to demonstrate from the beginning with this whole thesis of Moss Mountain Farm and building the main farmhouse for PBS, the Garden Home Show, making that traditional but high efficiency. And so we come around to the present day. We've built those 2 gatehouse cottages at the farm that are 1,000 square feet each. There's a pair, we call them the twin sister gatehouses because they're side by side with a space in between. We have a lot of weddings and things at the farm. And the idea ultimately is to use those as rentals for people who are having weddings at the farm. But presently they are there for someone to go inside and see the panel construction of one that is unfinished on the inside, and then go into the neighboring sister and take a look at how it's furnished and completed on the inside. And they're both in the Greek revival style. They're a mirror image of one another. So they do have that sort of 1830s aesthetic going on with the standing seam roof, and try to use similar materiality to what we did 20 years before with the main house.
They are beautiful. And I love that you've continued your educational approach that you've used really throughout your career in the product.
Well, thank you for recognizing that. Yeah, teaching is so important to me, and I love just sharing information and my experiences. I guess it really started in the garden and my interest in architecture and construction. It's spread into that particular realm as well. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about sustainability. That's another factor that I think that is a challenge in the home building industry. There's a lot of waste. There's often not enough attention on the ecology of the building material process. So can you speak a little bit to how SIP panels and some of these different technologies are improving sustainability in construction?
Yeah, sure. Well, one of the things that I'm really proud of with our manufacturing process here at Extreme Panel, and I happen to be here in Cottonwood, Minnesota today, in my office here is that there's very little waste on the floor. Like we're really zero waste as we take those big panels and we move them through the system. Any debris, leftovers are used in other ways. We're very proud of the fact that on jobs, once the panels are delivered, so they're all stacked and packed and wrapped and delivered to job sites. The panels are numbered and we send a laminated sheet and all the drawings together. So if it's raining and that kind of thing, when these things go up, you're safe and you can follow them. And they're all loaded onto the truck so they come off in the right sort of order. But the thing that's so fabulous about the process of building, if you go to a site that's stick built, and we've all been there and just seen these landscapes that are littered with all kinds of waste. It's just extraordinary. And with us, there's very little waste at all because the doors and windows are already pre-cut.
Right.
And we just did a job recently in Birmingham, Alabama for Navigate. We just shipped them 14 houses this past week. When we were working with them to demonstrate the first house, they were astonished because they did two of our houses and then one conventionally, just because they wanted to do all the data and just see what savings might there be with SIPs and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But what they realized is that the waste involved, you could put all of the waste of the SIP build in a couple of wheelbarrows. And for the stick-built house, they had to have a dumpster for the waste that went into it. So it's sizable. And that's one of the things that I'm really proud of. I think the other thing is just the resources, other resources such as time. The gatehouse cottages, for instance, each one of those houses, they're two-story, but it took 47 minutes to unload one of those, and it took 4 men 5 days to get it completely in the dry and wrapped. So, you're really saving a lot of labor there to get the house in the dry, ready for the other trades, the windows, doors being popped in, and then, of course, your electrical, mechanical, and plumbing.
I would imagine there's a significantly higher level of accuracy too when this is done at your location, essentially in a factory, rather than on a job site where you've got people and in the open elements trying to interpret architectural plans.
Our builders love that aspect, the precision of it. I had a builder in Idaho recently send me a picture that showed it was a big building and a long wall on it. And he took a photograph of just how straight and true and plumb that wall is. And he said, there's no way we could have done this with stick-built lumber. Not today. The lumber looks like a dog's hind leg. It's so crooked in so many cases today.
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That was exaggerated, but you get my point.
Yeah, you're very true. Yeah, very good. It's so interesting. I think we get stuck in ruts in the construction industry of how we build, and stick built has been the norm for so long. So it's exciting to see new technologies like this becoming more accessible to builders, because like you found years ago, this was not an accessible product for you.
Right. Yeah, it was there just weren't that many manufacturers 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And the ones that we did find were so far away, or they were a smaller company and really couldn't participate in the project.
Right. Yeah. When we're talking about this, sometimes you might think, well, this is for a small custom home, and yet some of the best use cases are on a very large scale. You mentioned build to rent. This is a great use case for this type of product.
Yeah, we provide SIP panels for all kinds of projects, big commercial projects. We work closely with large timber frame companies where they'll skin out a beautiful timber frame, often an antique one that's hand hewn, and they'll skin it out with our SIP panels. Hotels, apartment buildings, you name it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's exciting. Are there any new developments that you think we should be watching in terms of technology in this home building space?
Well, I think that there's always things going on the tech side, but one of the things that I've gotten particularly focused on is just the low voltage lighting. And with our SIP panels, people often ask, how do you deal with the electrical? Because you don't have these open studs. we have chases in the walls and the panels are marked where a light switch would be or a plug would be. And those chases make it very easy. But in the gatehouse cottages, one of the things that we use there, and I give Terry Deacon, who's the founder of Extreme Panel Technologies, all the credit. He found a low voltage lighting company, and the lighting is just glorious. And it's just plugged into the wall, essentially, for the entire house. So very excited about that.
That's impressive.
I'm very much a low-tech person, and I like the inside of a house to feel very cozy and comfortable with authentic things. And I like the lighting to simulate natural light. And now they can do that with these colors of lights and things like that. And then, of course, fireboxes. We used Rumford fireboxes in the main house, which is it's just a wonderful thing to have. It gives you great comfort just coming out of winter.
Well, I've been a big fan because I'm the same. I like home to feel warm and cozy and authentic. And so I'm excited to see all the new things that will be coming out of your Extreme Panel. And for those who have not checked out Alan's website, follow him on Instagram, watch his show on PBS. And you have a brand new book about to come out, right, Alan?
Well, yes, and I was just going to say, I think in this new book, which is rather large, it's 288 pages, I do talk about sort of the evolution of thought and ideas around Moss Mountain Farm. And I do touch on the SIP panels, and the gatehouses are featured in the book, and people can go to my website and pre-order. They'll be released, and we'll ship those pre-orders out the second week of May. Yeah.
It's exciting. I know you worked really hard on that book. That is a
Yeah.
book, and especially considering the amount of photographs that I imagine must be in it.
Well, I think it's about 550 photographs. Yeah, so it's very generous on the visual side. So yeah, hopefully people enjoy it. It's helpful. It's got a list of resources and lots of books from my library that were all instrumental in, I think, influencing my thoughts and decisions about the farm.
And you also offer tours of your farm, correct?
Well, there's a tour schedule, yes, and we're underway with tours. We started in March, first week of March, and we'll go through the end of June, and then we close for the summer, and then we pick back up in September, October, November, and a couple of weeks in December for the holidays, and then we close again and start back in the spring. Yeah.
I'll make it out there one of these days. It's a plan.
We are so looking forward to you getting out and seeing us. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. I've really enjoyed continuing our conversation and hope that we'll get to do this again.
I do too. All right. Very good. Thank you so much, Beth.
Thank you so much for being here. This was just as fascinating as sitting in the front row of IBS. I really enjoyed both presentations. And when I was sitting in the front row of IBS, I really enjoyed all the visuals that you had. So I'm looking forward to seeing those in the book. We maybe can include some of those visuals from the presentation in the show notes. I will be sure to link all the things where you can pre-order the book. You can learn more about the Extreme Panel Technologies and all the things that Alan is involved with. Again, thank you so much for being here with us today, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Anya.
Thank you.